Good morning, everyone. I'm Clinton Griffiths, editor of Farm Journal Magazine. Welcome to Farm Journal Live, coming to you from our studios here in northern Indiana. As we have a few minutes to share with you this morning and cover a couple of kind of interesting topics, just as you enjoy some coffee and breakfast and get woken up with your day and get started. We're going to be visiting today with Mark Brusberg. He's a USDA meteorologist who focuses on South American weather, and we'll also visit with machinery. Greg Peterson will be here to talk about some of the latest trends he's seeing in auction from around the country. August, a really busy month for online auctions as we kind of work through this coronavirus and pandemic. So we'll get some insights from him on how things are selling, what auction prices look like, what are some of the trends out there, just some interesting information to help you through your week as you, I know we're kind of getting geared up for harvest here across the country. So with all that said, why don't we bring in Mark Brusberg? He's a USDA meteorologist. Mark, hey, in the last week or so, we've been talking quite a bit about, the Climate Prediction Center at NOAA coming out and saying that we're expecting a La Nina to be forming or be with us through this winter. Give us a little insight on what that means.
Well, aside from the impacts on the United States weather, it does have some profound, course of direction that we sort of look for in South American weather. And contrary to what a lot of people believe, we see the biggest impact being on the corn crop in Argentina and potentially Brazil, rather than the soybean crop. So it's not an all or nothing where they have a drought and everything is wiped out.
Explain that for us, why it may impact, the corn crop and Argentina more than some of the other, the soybean crop there in Brazil.
Well, Argentina has more of a mid-latitude climate than Brazil. Brazil has a tropical rainy season in some of its biggest producers. And one of the things that a La Nina and even an El Nino will do is it will disrupt weather patterns all the way around the globe. And one of the things that we see in Argentina is if there is a La Nina, there is a greater chance for the jet stream to be shifted so that the air comes over the Andes rather than from the ocean side. So the moisture sort of gets wrung out. What we've seen in some of the past La Nina years has been that this dryness hits sometimes right around December, January, when the bulk of their corn is going through reproduction. And we've seen some very hot weather. Sometimes mid to late December, we see temperatures approaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's what happens. Soybeans are, they're a little more resilient, and they have a second soybean crop in Argentina that they'll plant after the wheat harvest. So they have a longer season, so there's more time to recover. We have seen problems with the soybean crop, but it's more frequently with the corn crop.
So as we start to kind of get our arms around this, we know it's there. It's about March, I guess, if you're talking South American weather. They're getting geared up for planting season. Is it too early to expect them to have some trouble? Have they had drought leading into planting season here?
It has been very dry so far in Argentina. We've actually seen impacts on their wheat crop being reported out of some of the provinces towards the western part of their growing area. Traditionally, you would see wetter weather in the eastern part of the country, say Buenos Aires, Entre Rios, if you're familiar with the geography. But this year, it dried out earlier than normal in some of those western areas. So places like Cordoba, La Pampa, they don't get a lot of winter rain anyway, and they got even less. And I want to say a couple of weeks ago, they also had a frost, which was very untimely, and that just compounded the problem. So they're getting off to a dry start, regardless of what happens with the La Nina coupling in the upcoming months.
And Mark, I know the La Nina, as far as our weather goes, can impact our fall and winter here. Do we have any expectations of what that may mean for us? Is it still too early in this cycle?
Well, it is kind of early, because one of the things that we look at is the winter rainy season across the southern part of the United States. So typically, we may expect drier conditions in the southeast over winter and also California. One of the things I'll point out, though, is we had a La Nina several years ago, and California had a recovery in their rainfall. So sometimes we expect something to happen, and it doesn't always.
Yeah. What did we see the last time that we had a La Nina situation down in Brazil, Argentina, in that area? Did it have an impact on production there?
The last La Nina, I guess, of note was 2017, and there was an impact. Not only did they have dryness in Argentina, but the Brazil rainy season got off to a late start. That pushed corn planting back, and that again, it's kind of a complicated formula down there in Brazil. But they grow soybeans. They harvest the soybeans and then they plant corn. In some of the tropical areas, they can plant soybeans a couple of weeks late and it doesn't really have an impact on the soybeans. But then if the corn crop goes in a couple of weeks late and the rainy season in those tropical areas I alluded to a while back, if it dries out early, then they can have a poor corn crop or poorer than expected corn crop. So the only thing is, as I mentioned, every La Nina and El Nino is different. And actually, 2017 was sort of the second year of a 2-year event. The first year, we didn't see a whole lot of problems.
Okay, interesting. Well, it is a kind of a moving target and a pretty dynamic situation always whenever we're cycling between this La Nina and El Nino scenario. We know down in South America, prices have been pretty good for farmers down there, and there's a lot of incentive for them to come in and plant a big crop coming up here in the fall and winter 2020 and harvest in 2021. So appreciate your insights, Mark. Thank you so much for jumping on with us this morning for Farm Journal Live and kind of walking us through some of the impacts that we could or may see because of this La Nina cycle going forward.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark. Well, let's go ahead and bring in Greg Peterson, Machinery Pete, joining us from his home office there in Rochester, Minnesota. Greg, good morning. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Clinton. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Hey, so as we talk about some of the auctions that we've seen, kind of given some of this scenario of 2020, right? So COVID-19 and all of the in-person auctions basically being halted, a lot of things moving online. How have we seen that impact the auction market? I heard August was really busy.
Yeah, Clinton, you're right. August was very busy. I've been doing this just over 30 years, and I think August of 2020, definitely the busiest August I've ever seen. And we're seeing a split now. I mean, a lot of the sales are still online only, but as states have started to open up here since, middle of May, end of May, slowly, there are, quite a number of physical on-site auctions. Okay. So price-wise, I've written and talked about it a lot, but just kind of blew me away what happened in March and April with the shift to online from a pricing standpoint. I absolutely did not miss a beat at all. In fact, even strengthened a little bit, which is really unusual right on the cusp of planning like that in April. So through the summer here into early fall, the same trends have been holding. I mean, if it's in good condition, used equipment, particularly with a little bit of age on it, that stuff is just still incredibly red hot. Conversely, not everything is in awesome condition, and that's just the way it is. And if it is average condition, those prices are softening. Okay.
So let's talk about some of the specifics. Obviously, we've got, fall harvest season coming up here. If we're talking combines, what have been the trends out there on the combine market as we get ready for this 2020 harvest?
Yeah, great question, Clinton. The combines, a couple things we're seeing. I think some better buying opportunities just here of late on the later model combines, and that might seem counterintuitive here as we drift more towards harvest throughout the Midwest. You think, oh gosh, guys need combines now, but this is sort of following a pattern. Until it's in the bin, there's a little hesitancy. especially on the late model, the big stuff, these combines, you're drifting out $200,000-300,000. So a little bit of softening there, not terrible, just a little bit. But conversely, what we're seeing is combines with a little bit of age on them. We're seeing some strengthening. So, for example, end of last week, I think Friday and Saturday, we saw one auction in Iowa, Northwest Iowa, and one in Southwest Minnesota, where there were a pair of 2012 model John Deere S600 series machines, which is the first model year they made that. And these were very strong prices. We saw an S660 in Northwest Iowa go for $131, and an S670 in South Central Minnesota, Mapleton, I think it was, go for $144. Those were the highest auction prices on 12 models of S670, S660 all year. So it kind of gets to that thing I've noticed for years, where if you get out around 10 years old and you're in good condition with low hours, man, that's the sweet spot, because the discrepancy between the cost of a new one or a 2-year-old one is so big that it makes the amount of buyers shift towards wanting that older one. So interesting little sub-trends there.
Yeah, that is interesting. What about on, we're talking about grain carts and tractors. And here's the thing, you and I have not really discussed what we're going to talk about, but I always feel comfortable just lobbing stuff at Greg, because he's gonna have an answer. He just studies this stuff inside and out. So as we talk about some of the grain cart and maybe some of the tractors that we use to pull those through the field, what are we seeing there?
Well, grain carts to me have been pretty solid. Gravity, if you get smaller, the gravity wagons, which, many people are, those are yesterday's news or whatever, but gravity wagons have been very strong, good condition. So different parts around the country or just smaller operations using the carts or the wagons have been hot. Grain carts, again, I think as you drift above $50,000 range, tend to be, how would I say, a little bit better buys. And if you hold in that kind of high teens to mid 30 range, if it's in good condition, those values tend to be a little more stable. On the tractor front, we're seeing kind of a couple things. One, the tractors are still pretty hot, and they have been for about 2 years now. Still residue of the weather situations the last couple of years. And then again, just the age of tractors. We're seeing an incredible strengthening on that 10-plus-year-old range if they're nice condition. So an example, let's see, this sale was on Saturday in Fulton, South Dakota, which I think is maybe like southeast South Dakota. There was a really nice 2004 John Deere 8520. So, we're talking 16 years old, up over 200 horse there. It had just under 3,700 hours on it, and it brought 113, which again, what I do, we just compile all the prices. So, how high is 113? Well, that's the highest auction price in 3.5 years on that 8520 model. So again, whatever color it is, if you're out over 10 years old with low hours, man, you're sitting on gold if you're selling one of those things.
Talk to me a little bit about, obviously we're not just, harvesting and shelling corn here and soybeans. We're also doing some forage work out there, trying to wrap up hay for this year, doing some silage. What does that market look like?
Well, again, I would say, Clinton, we're seeing something similar there on the hay side. If it's smaller, the mower conditioners, the small square balers, disc binds, those things have been red hot pretty much all of 2020. As you get larger, whether that be a large square baler or, self-propelled chopper, it just tends to be a little bit better buys because you're thinning out the buying pool. And of course, in the current economy we're in, it's just, a little challenge as the dollars get up over, $100,000, $200,000. Now, that said, I have seen some strong pricing on some self-propelled choppers. I think a little bit of bounce back, maybe in the dairy areas, Wisconsin, we have seen a little bit of strengthening there. So that's positive to see. But again, general rule here is this: if it's smaller, good used equipment, it's just more buyer demand.
So Greg, I know every once in a while or maybe every week you stumble across something just crazy interesting. Give us a story about some of the equipment that you've seen here lately that is just kind of out of this world unique.
Well, the one that probably people are talking about most of late here, Clinton, there's a sale coming up October 28th in Spear, Saskatchewan by our good friends at Ritchie Brothers. And my longtime friend there, Brendan Kramer, a territory manager for Ritchie Brothers, tipped me off about a month ago, and he said, Pete, we got this sale coming up you're just not going to believe. And it's one of those about once every decade you see a sale like this, Clinton. And this was a sale. The guy was kind of a lifelong bachelor, and he used to be part owner of a John Deere store up there in central Saskatchewan. And he, over the years, he tended to buy an occasional John Deere tractor as an investment and then just let it sit. So he's got 2 tractors on this sale, October 28th, that are just nuts. One is a 92 model 4760, 3.6 actual hours on it. Still got the tags on the tires, you can see, plastic on the seat. The other is an 88 model 4450 two-wheel drive with 256 hours on it. So these things, I mean, they're absolute time machines, and a ton of speculation already about, man, what do you think those things are going to go for? So last night I posted a YouTube video from yesterday's Ag Day show where I just commented on these things, and I hopped in and showed the highest John Deere 4760 I've ever seen sold, which is 85.5 3 years ago in central Indiana. It had like 484 hours on it. And then on the 4450 front, highest I've ever seen there is 77.5 out of South Dakota back. That was a little over 5 years ago. So we'll see on those. I think we'll have a price guessing game. So you'll have to get your Ag Day host price guess on those babies, Clinton. That'll be fun.
Yeah, well, it's just fascinating, and you know, we do stumble across people that will buy some of this equipment for an investment or a tractor, and just hold on to it and use it as an investment longer term.
Yeah, I mean, you go down to the bank. What interest rate are you getting on your CDs right now?
Yeah, right.
I think, I've been writing for 30 years, just covering these hard cash auction prices, and if you pay attention, I mean, typically we write about, like that I mentioned before, that 2004 model, 16 years old, bringing highest price in 3.5 years. So if you begin to apply these trends forward, that's what these folks are doing. And, we chuckle about it and say, well, why would you buy a new tractor and not use it? Well, I mean, look what's happened over the years. It's just, it's been proven to, go up in value. Now, some people, when I write about this stuff, people say, they kind of get after me and they'll say, Pete, you're not accounting for inflation. That gets too complicated for me, I guess. I'll let you make your own calculation on that, the cost of money, which obviously is a factor. But, these tractors, what's interesting to me, Clinton, is when they show up for sale, like this 4760 with 3.6 hours. October 28th. Now, the natural assumption is, oh my God, that'll have to be bought by a museum. I've had people ask me, will John Deere buy it? Which I don't think they will, but or will Hollywood buy it as a timepiece? Again, the assumption is they'll be just bought and stored. But what I found is about 50 to 60% of the time, these things are bought to put in the field, and it's shocking to people. But really, if you pull back, it's not that. The reasoning makes sense, because people are like, okay, a 4760, just under 200 horse. What's a new one cost? And you say, well, here, say it goes for $100,000, 15,000 over the record. Okay, you set a record, you paid $100K. But what does a new, 180 horse tractor cost? And yeah, you're going to have some issues with it because it's been sitting for 30 years. But like I said, about 50, 60% of the time, people buy it to put it back in the field.
Well, it's just a fascinating market to watch, and I know you spend a lot of time combing through the numbers and going through the data, and we always appreciate it. Greg, what's the easiest way for people to find you if they're looking to get a hold of you here?
Oh, just type Machinery Pete wherever you're going, folks. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, of course, our website, machinerypete.com. And I throw out there too, Clint, we want to let people know that on our website, machinerypete.com, the auction price data is now free.
Nice.
A lifetime compiling this stuff. So it was always a little bit frustrating. People would ping me and say, hey, Pete, I just bought this grain truck or the skid steer. How'd I do? Well, we want to put all these numbers in your hands beforehand, folks, so you can look at the 48 of them that just sold. So you'll know everything I'm looking at, and I really hope it can be helpful and kind of fun for people to look at the data.
Yeah, well, there's just a mountain of data, and as we go through years like this, as we're trying to manage our bottom lines and everything, it is interesting to know how do we stack up as we, maybe look at some of this equipment and go and buy it off auction. Appreciate it as always, Greg, thank you so much. Machinery Pete, thank you for being part of Farm Journal Live today. Of course, we're going to continue to bring you some Farm Journal Lives throughout the rest of today. About noon Central Time, we'll be back with some more guests. And then, over the next couple of days, we'll be doing some live virtual conversations for you here from our studios in Northern Indiana. Thank you so much. I'm Clinton Griffiths. Thanks for joining us on Farm Journal Live. We'll see you again soon.